Hey there, explorers. Welcome to Cosmic Ray's Starlight Cafe. I got my Diet Coke here. We are ready to go. Not only is this a space rich with deliciously nostalgic fast food-esque eats and odors, it's also home to quite a bit of Tomorrowland characters and Tomorrowland history. This space called Cosmic Rays has offered respite to many the weary intergalactic Disney World traveler, offering them mediocre burgers, fries, and air conditioning for nearly 50 years. And as inviting as that amazing toppings bar actually was, no one was really coming here for the food. No, they come for the thrill of the venue, a venue which has been home to many an influential musician or artist. Listen to it. Cosmic Ray's Starlight Cafe has always been filled with the sounds and excitement of a Disney World in motion. But against all of that has been the music, sweet songs of tomorrow. Today, we're going back to the Tomorrowland of yesterday, when this quaint little cafe was just a terrace. So let's hit the replay, guys. This is a musical history of Cosmic Ray's Starlight Cafe. Tomorrowland, a vista into wondrous ideas, as Walt himself would put it, a step into the future. The vision for Tomorrowland would play an interesting contrast to the rest of the goings-on within the Magic Kingdom. Accompanied by lands that harken back to yesterday, so frontier, adventure, and fantasy, Tomorrowland would perhaps have the most unique challenge in its delivery. Without the benefit of nostalgia, Tomorrowland would have to create its own, and through its handful of offerings, Tomorrowland would boast the power of potential human achievement, granting guests the ability to pursue the future and explore worlds outside of our own. In Tomorrowland, a shimmering goal for mankind was carved, and a sense of discovery was craved by all who entered, as each of the 5 senses would drown in a sea of visionary ambiance. The sights and the smells and, well, maybe not the sounds.
Of course, in Tomorrowland, as in any glimpse of the future, there still remains a bit of today.
While Tomorrowland was home to a lofty outlook for the future, that goal was anything but in the Tomorrowland Terrace, a gigantic eatery on the border of fantasy and tomorrow. The terrace offered guests a venue to sit in an air-conditioned indoor space, chow on some traditional American eats, and relax in the energy of Disney's newest theme park. In addition to the menu, the Tomorrowland Terrace would be home to a bit of extra distraction via musical acts that would regularly take the center concert stage. These were often resident bands from the local area, groups like the Dallas Soundtrack, Sage, and Kids of the Kingdom, who oftentimes played modern tunes, Disney-centric renditions, and somewhat relevant covers of contemporary music. While everything else in the land presented the future, the diners at the Tomorrowland Terrace were stuck in today. But there was a new sound brewing, a futuristic sound was warming up. It was the sound of electricity, the sound of space and the future. It was the sound of tomorrow. The music landscape was changing.
The story I'm about to tell you is one of the most extraordinary tales of our time. It's a story of change, a change which has affected all of us. Some say it's a change for the worse. Others find it a change that is very exciting.
By this time, the world had been dabbling over the edge of synthetic sound and electronically made music for a short decade or two, often finding the music employed within science fiction films and gimmicky novelty albums. There was something strange and alien about the way it sounded, something foreign and otherworldly in the way it made us feel. Yes, it was new, it was revolutionary, and for the time being, it was rare, but it was about to come alive in a big way in the form of one particular performer. His name? Michael Iceberg.
And now, direct from Jake's basement in Aspen, Colorado.
An accomplished musician, Michael Iceberg had been playing the classical piano since he had been 4 years old. That passion would continue throughout his youth and through his graduation from the prestigious Juilliard School of Music and into the potential lifelong career of retailing musical equipment. This is where Michael Iceberg would find his calling. While meddling with a simple electronic organ, he found he was able to program different sounds and different tones into the machine. And with the power of computer technology working underneath and a personal obsession for tinkering, Michael Iceberg discovered an eclectic and sensational symphony of his own design.
And I have these two 10-speed gear shifts. They're the kind from bicycles, and when I shift gears, I get different sounds. For instance, if I'm playing the violins, I'm in first gear. But if I want to play guitars, I put it over to fourth gear, and I have guitars. Give me the guitar.
Soon, Michael Iceberg would sell off his music stores and would take his melodic contraption on the road, beginning to perform as a one-man orchestra in bars and restaurants all across the United States. Iceberg recalled being dismayed by the fact that reporters kept calling his creation an organ. When asked what he'd like it to be referred to as, he quickly stated, "The Iceberg Machine." It was more than just an organ, it was more than just a keyboard, it was all of those things and more. In the mid-1970s, Michael Iceberg was playing an engagement at a bar in Hollywood not too far away from the Disney studios. One evening, some artists stopped in to catch a bite and were subsequently met with Michael Iceberg and the synthy sounds of his Iceberg machine. They were entranced and they loved it, and they would tell the higher-ups in Disney all about it. And not too long after, Michael Iceberg would conclude a show and be met by someone from Disney Entertainment who, equally impressed, would offer him a 3-week contract to play the Tomorrowland Terrace in the Magic Kingdom. Michael Iceberg accepted, and the Iceberg Machine was officially heading to Walt Disney World. Michael Iceberg played his first show in Tomorrowland on the 4th of July, 1976. His first shows in the Terrace would lack a lot of the bells and whistles many guests would come to remember. There wasn't a great amount of formula or structure to his set list yet, and Iceberg himself would recall it as being in a chaotic state. He would simply rise from the belly of the Magic Kingdom utilidors and go. In spite of this, the music he played enchanted everyone who had the privilege to listen. As the issue of Eyes and Ears, an in-house cast member newsletter would declare, "Sitting on the stage in Tomorrowland Terrace is a machine. No, a device, not quite. More like the lunar landing capsule, perhaps. But whatever you call it, it produces a sound the likes of which you've never heard before." Even though Michael Iceberg was performing right in the middle of a busy restaurant in the center of a theme park competing with eats and commotion and the occasional interruption of walk-around Fantasyland characters, Michael Iceberg and the sounds of the Iceberg Machine powered through. Guests in the Terrace were refreshed by more than just the AC, but also by the visionary music coming from the Iceberg Machine. And when Michael Iceberg's 3-week contract was up, Disney immediately signed him for another 3 weeks. And then another, and soon Michael was signing contracts for 6-month periods at a time. He would play 6 shows a day, 6 days a week, and in addition to the Iceberg Machine and some Disney magic, by his own admission, Iceberg would also employ a little elevation for most of his shows. Michael Iceberg, over this stretch of time, would have a good amount of freedom to develop his concert into what he wanted it to be. This period allowed him to fine-tune his set list, and while his show would gradually take shape, so also would the Iceberg Machine itself. Its entrance to the Terrace would be a spectacle of its own, as the machine, now in gigantic pyramid-like form, would slowly emerge amidst light and fog, and right at the peak, would be Michael Iceberg, surrounded by an assembly of gears, knobs, and keys. All of this would be in clear view as huge mirrors would allow the terrace audience from multiple angles a true look at the talent on display. His show would often include a slew of recognizable tunes, including the William Tell Overture and the Baroque Hoedown from the Main Street Electrical Parade, which, while seemingly drenched in his influence, contrary to popular opinion, was not actually composed by Iceberg himself. He'd also take several moments during the set to demonstrate the sampling possibilities of his synthesizers.
And stuff like that. Of course, I have certain troubles, I have a companion that travels around the country with me, and you just can't get your dog in this place real easy, and I finally had to resort to putting my dog, I have Benny the dog. I put him on a chip. I got Benny the dog now in G. Ben? And I got cats in G sharp, even though I don't like them, so I can make it rain cats and dogs now whenever I want. Let's squeeze the cat a little up there, please. Good. Squeeze him again. Angry crowd in D. Oh, I love a good boo like that.
In addition, there would be numerous nods to some of Iceberg's favorite bands like Pink Floyd and the Moody Blues, as well as a handful of his own original compositions like The Robot Revolt and The Little Piggy Hoedown. A fan favorite, though, for many who saw his show would be when Michael Iceberg would rein in the lunacy a bit and play a soft and gentle lullaby he had written for his daughter Wendy. He called it Fanfare.
Don't look now, but love is at my doorstep. Through my window, there's a rainbow. Now there's someone sleeping on my pillow, and she tells me she's never gonna go. And now I know there's a prayer for me, someone who really cares for me, and if she will be there for me, that's all I wanna know.
While the zaniness and spontaneity of his original shows were slightly honed into something a little more routine, many guests and cast members would remember checking out Iceberg's latest shows of the night, where he'd often be less structured and experimental in what he presented, as most of management would have gone home by that time. Michael Iceberg was an undeniable hit with Disney World guests, and his popularity would grow and grow, and he would play the Tomorrowland Terrace for the foreseeable future. In the coming years, Iceberg would contribute greatly towards a handful of other Disney soundtracks, composing a great amount of music for the Epcot Center and playing a heavy role in the supplemental Tron short film, Computers Are People Too. During his time with Disney, Michael Iceberg would play engagements at Disneyland and the newly opened Epcot Center, eventually moving out of the terrace and into the Tomorrowland Theater, where he would continue his regular show. He would also record a live concert in 1977 and release it as his first LP record entitled Iceberg Does It Live. He would also gain considerable notoriety after appearing on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Anyway, he spent 13 years building a maze of electronic synthesizers, and he has something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Would you welcome, please, Michael Iceberg.
After 6 memorable years, Michael Iceberg's contract with Disney was once again reaching its expiration, and with a desire to take the Iceberg Machine back on the road, Michael Iceberg and Tomorrowland would officially part ways in 1982. Iceberg and the Iceberg Machine would spend the next decades touring the country, playing campuses and fairgrounds and more, all around the country. When there was hardly any before, Michael Iceberg brought the industrious sounds of the future to Tomorrowland. With eccentric and frenetic energy, Michael Iceberg ensured that every single one of his performances would last as an unforgettable reminder of a visit to Tomorrowland. Michael Iceberg committed to his listeners an enjoyable expedition into a new and wondrous world of electronic sound. His enthusiasms, his music, and his genuine sincerity would have a lasting impact on all who had the luxury to witness him play. And above all, it was plain to see that in every single presentation he gave, Michael Iceberg was having just as much fun as his audience. Perhaps that alone is the reason for his enduring legacy for many of Tomorrowland's earliest guests. While Michael Iceberg may be an unknown name for many today, at the time he was the definitive sound of the future and the definitive sound of Tomorrowland. Those listening to the Iceberg Machine these days might agree the sounds are a bit antiquated, but for a lucky few, they still serve greatly as a sentimental time machine, bringing them back to an era of original Magic Kingdom memories, a unique soundtrack for first dates, for family vacations, for musical epiphanies, and so much more. Whenever Michael Iceberg was playing, someone was experiencing a special kind of Walt Disney World magic.
Save ourselves.
As for the Tomorrowland Terrace, Michael Iceberg would be succeeded by more local contemporary bands. Music acts like Grupo Tabasco would take the rising stage, reverting back to simple covers of top 40 hits, immediately losing the winning Tomorrowland impression that Michael Iceberg had so effectively manufactured. Tabasco was fine as far as house bands go, and many remember their performances fondly as well, but agreeably, this kind of musical entertainment in Tomorrowland now felt more out of place than ever. Tabasco and the collection of other bands that played the Terrace stage in the 80s and 90s have been mostly buried in our collective memory. Within this era, Tomorrowland was in a state of bland, clearly in the middle of an identity crisis, having lost the zeal of its opening day intentions. The future had seemingly come and gone, and now Tomorrowland was outdated. But luckily for us, help was on the way. Someone else was waiting in the wings. A complete transformation of an entire land was on the horizon, and the whole thing was going to be anchored by one location, one venue, one Zorky. He was something truly out of this world, and his name was Sunny Eclipse, and he'd have an electronic musical contraption and legacy all of his own.
So there you have it, the groundwork, the early beginnings for this space in which we now stand, the area formerly known as the Tomorrowland Terrace. But we're not done. There's so many questions left to answer. Who is Sunny Eclipse? What is a Starlight Cafe anyway? These are questions and stories for a different day, so stay tuned, because what's coming is gonna be astronomical? Until next time, we'll see you in the happy place. Bye.
So high above the ground, we got a yell around, and give us kind of